You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
At one point, as a young kid, I was a follower. I wanted to be liked and accepted, and I wanted to go through the social norms. And I soon found out that what everybody was chasing inside this box was not for me. And then so throughout the years, I learned to really believe in my own vision, my own path, and situating myself in a business that really complements my strengths and something that's a fit for me.
Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 254 with John Uhrich.
John, welcome to the show. Super pumped to talk to you, man. Ted's told me a ton about your story over the years, and thank you for finally agreeing. I bet Ted has pestered you for a while.
Lots of times at the cigar bar hanging out and like, dude, we got to get you on to tell your story. And then I found out he's like, oh yeah, and by the way, I have a whole bunch of real estate on the side.
But the real question we want to kick things off with is, in the world of ticket sales, what does working the corner mean exactly? Because I think a lot of people might have a different connotation for that.
Well, in the world of ticket sales, working the corner is a outdated concept. And since we've gone to mobile tickets, I really haven't seen a street guy on the corner in probably 10 years.
Then they used to hit him on the hand and walk around.
Boom, yeah. Yeah, you'd hit the tickets. But yeah, that's how tickets were first distributed, probably for 100 or so years. And how I started in 2003 was on the street corner. So I would, have maybe $300 to $500 cash in my pocket, a lot of low bills, 1s, 5s, and 10s. You'd stand on a street corner and you'd buy extras from fans and try to flip them to people that needed tickets. So working the corner was a huge part of the industry 10 plus years ago.
Now, okay, timestamp this for us. When you first sold your very first ticket on the corner, what year would this have been about?
So actually it was when I was 10 years old. It was the 1991 Nebraska-Colorado State game.
Oh, wow.
Shut up.
My dad had an extra set of tickets. Yeah. But, as a full-time deal, the first time I sat on a street corner and flipped multiple pairs would have been the Nebraska-Penn State game of 2003.
Okay.
That was my first time working a corner full time.
Now, you were living in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time, right? So Husker Town, USA. And was that the emphasis of most of your early ticket sales and the stuff that you were able to put together capital-wise? Yeah.
So, the whole business really started during the 95 Nebraska football season. We wanted to see them play a game at Boulder. So they were both top 10. I think it was number 2 Nebraska, number 7 Colorado. And, you called box offices or you had to be a donor. So I started to call brokers out in the Denver area to grab a ticket for that. And so Nebraska won handily that day, no offensive penalties. That was the game Amon Green scored the first play from scrimmage. And then we go on to the Fiesta Bowl. And at the time, the Nebraska-Florida Fiesta Bowl was a $325 ticket. And my dad wasn't really all that street smart, so I started to call brokers up in Tempe, and we had a local guy, Chad, from Ticket Express. I would call him, and I was 14 years old.
Chad.
Yeah.
He was doing it back then?
Yeah. Chad started his company in 92, 93. It was the first legitimatized broker in the Omaha area.
I met him when I was doing the nightlife.
Oh, you know him?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What a small world.
Yeah.
Okay, so, man, I can't wait to dig into this story. It's going to be a little bit different than one of our normal episodes in that you have a very successful business and you're almost investing in real estate as an afterthought. And we'll get into, kind of your story with real estate and what you've done with it. But talk us through, so 10 years old, 14 years old, you're calling brokers in Colorado, trying to, schlep tickets to Husker games. I mean, is this normal? I mean, I could not imagine getting on the phone and talking to an adult person and trying to basically make money off of whatever type of interaction I have with them on the phone. Weren't you scared?
I really wasn't scared, and I just kind of said, well, I'm the only street smart person in this family that understands brokers because I used to read the newspaper and I'd pick up and see the classifieds with buying and selling Husker tickets, right?
Yeah.
And I was 12 years old and I was fascinated with this. I go, well, I'm glad we have Husker season tickets, but they're in the end zone. And I go, you mean I can find a seller that has 50-yard line tickets out there? Or I can buy tickets for a Super Bowl, a Final Four? I was intrigued. I thought it was the coolest business out there, and I would just call random ads and get a quote for the, 94 Final Four with Duke and Arkansas and Charlotte. I got Super Bowl pricing. So I started to get pricing as a little kid. It just really fascinated me how that business worked.
And back then it was like getting in the Thrifty Nickel or the World Herald to get those at leads, right?
The World Herald classifieds were probably 10 times as expensive 30 years ago as they are now because there's no viewership, but yes.
Wow. Okay, as someone who is a little longer in the tooth than probably some of our listeners out there, I remember
or us.
Shut up.
Yeah.
I remember going through the Thrifty Nickel, like the classifieds, when I was in probably my early teenage years and stuff, and looking for stuff to buy and sell and all that. I loved it, man. And then when I got into real estate, this was before really anything online, and I was reading books and buying the paper, and I'd look for seller ads in there that appeared to be motivated, and I remember that vividly. But you have kind of parlayed that early effort in ticket sales into a substantial business, which is really cool. But I'm fascinated with the side hustle aspect of this. You did this when you were a teen. You have obviously had a wildly, successful, tumultuous time over the last, from what I know about your background. When did you decide to do this full time? Were you ever working a full-time job and this was still a side hustle and you were just doing it on the weekends, or how'd that look for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, this was September of 2003. I was in my fourth year at the University of Nebraska, and I hated school. I thought it was a indoctrination tool for a dead-end job. I didn't want to work. I was making $10 an hour at the Gallup call center, working around a bunch of D-bags and a bunch of indoctrination. And, it was so bad that you'd have to write each other these phony drops like, oh, so-and-so, I loved your phone call. And by the way, here's your $10 an hour check. Okay. I hated it. Terrible company, right? And
coming in hot.
So I put an ad in the paper, and boom, it said buy and sell Nebraska Penn State tickets. I borrowed $150. I think I had to borrow another couple $100, and all of a sudden, to my amazement, the phone started ringing, and it rung a lot harder than I could imagine. I'd leave class and grab a call. All of a sudden, I get my first call. A elderly lady has season tickets. It's a 6:00 kick. Want $65 each. And then on my way to pick them up, I get another call. They're sold at $90. For someone making $10 an hour, making $70 in 45 minutes, that I go, this is just unbelievable. And it was that first ticket deal, and everything propelled afterwards. And it was there. The first week I said, I'm doing this instead of working at Gallup, or instead of sweating filling out a job resume as I graduate University of Nebraska. So it was a quick transition there.
Yeah.
And you probably had to have everything come on a voicemail system. Actually, you had to play it in your room every single time because you had no cell phones at the time, right?
Yeah.
Or very, very limited.
It was very limited. Yeah, that's correct.
They had the T9 texting thing where you had to hit a button four times.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It was T9
BlackBerry.
texting, yes.
I tried to explain that to my son the other day. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be your first cell phone. It's going to be a flip phone, and you're going to have T9. And I was totally serious.
What's old is new again. Okay, so let's kind of like expand this a little bit. You caught some early success and interest in ticket sales. Sounds like your buying and selling activities kind of stemmed from some classified ads, which is pretty cool. At what point did you start doing other locations other than just, Nebraska or somewhere Nebraska's playing?
Yeah. So, at first the classified ads were pretty simple, right? So, you would get a call, and I was used to that type of transaction. Well, as the Nebraska football season ran dry, I ran out of money and I needed another source than the classified ads. So what I learned really quickly, or I attempted to, was how to work a street corner and effectively buy and sell tickets. And the first 3 months I did it, I was absolutely terrified, and I was the worst guy on the corner. Everything I thought would work did not work. I was very timid. I wore this dorky pair of Dockers with this oversized polo, and I'd hand out business cards and try to make small talk with Husker fans about going to the same high high school was Eric Crouch, and just nonsensical stuff that nobody cared about, right? And then I got focused, and I started walking on that street corner with swag. If I was scalping tickets in Lincoln on 14th and P, I owned 14th and P. And nobody walked by me without buying or selling their tickets. And I literally looked everybody in the eyes. I got super aggressive, and I sold myself, right? Or I would work things like Creighton where it wasn't sold out and tell people, hey, you go to the box office, you sit upstairs. You're not going to do that today. You're going to use my service because we're going to sit in a good seat.
And just so you guys know, if you tune in late, we're not talking about male escorts. We are talking about ticket sales on the corner.
It's funny. Just, one thing I wanted to call out here is it reminds me almost of like real estate wholesalers there's some similarities on how this works, because you're trying to basically put two parties together and make it, work for both sides.
Yep.
Well, mainly your side, but it's so funny because you're basically a matchmaker between people who can't do something and other people that want to do something and matching them up. And that's pretty cool. You can do that in like so many different aspects of business and life. Okay. So when did you hit your first road trip, and where was it?
That is a great question. So the first road trip that I remember, I had to take some midterms at Lincoln. There was an event I had to work Friday night, and then I got in the car and I drove through the night, and we went to the Red River Shootout, the OU Texas game at the Texas State Fair. And holy cow, was that a road trip. So to work that event, I think at the time I was during Texas's national title run. They had Vince Young. That was a $400 or $500 ticket. So I was only used to having $300, $400, $500 cash in my pocket. I needed to have $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 cash in my pocket.
Yeah.
And wow, all of a sudden I was, buying a 4-pack for $2,000, flipping for $2,600. This was a real big time event. I'm 21 years old down there at the Texas State Fair saying, holy cow, this was really cool. So that was the first one. And then I remember we drove to Waco, Texas to try to scratch out some soup and sandwich money at a Baylor football game, and we ended up selling rain ponchos and made like $600. It's funny to think about all these things, but yeah, that was the first real road trip I can recall where we worked the streets. And that Red River Shootout, if you haven't been, it's an absolute riot. It's half OU, half Texas. People are drinking. They're drunk at 11. There's fights in the parking lot. There's no love.
Oh yeah, it's
between
huge rivalry. Yeah.
But 21 years old, making thousands and thousands of dollars while you're on a little road trip, I couldn't even imagine what you were doing.
it was about a $3,000 to $4,000 take, and yeah, for somebody coming off $10 an hour, that was huge money. That was a party that night. That was unbelievable.
Yeah. Now, how much do you think at one point you ever had? What was the most you ever had in your pocket at one time of all the years you've been doing this?
Oh, there was times I tried to work the Super Bowl. I'd bring $250,000 cash like through the airport.
Dude.
Yeah.
Holy crap. What do they say at the airport?
Absolutely nothing. But I said, here, just put it in my shaving bag. We run it on through, and they're all in nice little stacks of 10 large. But the security they didn't even look at me. I go, thanks, guys. Have a nice day.
All right. For those of you pickpockets,
it was a different world.
Robbers out there. He does not do this anymore.
No.
This was back in the day. But did you ever have anybody try and rob you?
The only thing I can recall was I was working the Big 12 tournament at Kemper Arena. And I got thrown in a dumpster. So yeah, it really happened. I was on a guy's street corner, and I go, well, I got two options. Do I quit this business and go back to Gallup for $10 an hour, or do I brush myself off, and is it time to go back to work? So we just went back to work. But no, I was never robbed. I think the dumpster dive was probably about the worst thing that happened like during those days.
That's so good. All right. Walk us through the transition from real world stuff to the online business. Like, when roughly did that happen? And like, how did it go? Was it clunky, or did you hit the ground running?
Well, so I was really fortunate that I started ground zero at the time of the online business. So the first company I give a lot of credit to was StubHub. They were founded by Jeff Florer and their current CEO, Eric Baker, two Stanford grads.
Do you know those guys?
Met them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're probably sitting on a 100-foot yacht like right now. So they've sold out and done extremely well. But what the StubHub model did is prior to that, you'd have to buy and sell tickets on eBay. and there was no customer service. There was no standards. So you had one amateur selling to another amateur.
Mm-hmm.
And that model wasn't successful. With the StubHub model, they had a centralized customer service team. They, had rules and regulations, and it really added to the customer experience. Their seat maps were better. The way you listed a ticket with a section and row, you had to put in a stringent delivery date, and you weren't paid for selling your tickets until those tickets had a FedEx tracking number. So that really changed everything, and it benefited the consumer because there was no more bringing cash to a street corner, dealing with some guy out of town that doesn't have a merchant account, doesn't have a customer service account. And what that did is it really aided credibility, and I think it made the ecosystem of buying a secondary ticket, a lot safer, and gave the consumer a lot more confidence.
Only if it stayed that way.
Right. Now, what I'm hearing is you adapted to a pretty major industry shift, and one that went from analog to online, and you kind of were front running the people that were making all the decisions on where the industry was going. You were basically right on their tails. How did you get your news? Like, how did you even know what to do at that point where you're used to one business model, all of a sudden it drastically changes? And then how do you figure it out? Do you have somebody on speed dial that's done this before? Did you have the StubHub guys as advisors, or what was the landscape like?
Well, so we really changed 3 times, right? So, it was more of a hobby business as I was in college, but I was working my hobby full time. And then so I graduate college 2005, and pretty much every day I'd go to work, but by then everything was online. So we were a traditional broker. We would sit down, and I knew college football, and we'd make investments into teams like USC during that time period. And we tried to make a business out of buying or selling tickets. I learned about 5 years into the business, I made a terrible broker. I couldn't price tickets right. I couldn't really see things right. So I made a decision that we transitioned to marketing.
Okay.
And that was huge, where we would market on Bing and Google and not buy the tickets, but put eyes on other brokers' tickets. And what made that decision is my mentor in the business, Don Vaccaro, the CEO of Ticket Network. He said, hey, why don't you try this new white label program of Ticket Networks, and gave me some website ideas. So I listened to one of the most successful guys in secondary tickets that guided me to a structure that better fit the skill sets of the organization we had at the time.
Okay. So you got a really good indication from somebody in the know about a business model shift that you should do. You implemented that. Was it instantly successful, or were you kind of like, God, is this work spending a ton of money on ads? And like, it's kind of you're making a Hail Mary here. What was that like?
Yeah, there was a lot of things going on during that time period in 2011. So we'd made some bad investments, and hired my current business partner, Howie Schwartz, and he was hired on as an employee at the time. And so I just said, hey, this isn't working. So we started to advertise in February. Unfortunately, I knew enough about tickets that we knew how to price the service fees. We knew enough to make a nice landing page and a customer experience. So we were pretty successful with this out of the gate. We basically ran some test ads starting in February, March. And by accident, what happened is the web advertising, I thought all the sales would be done on the web. We got phone call after phone call after phone call with people that wanted the call center experience. So all of a sudden, what came in is just supposed to be a web business, and that's the majority of our sales, but it turned into the call center that we have now, that we started in August of 2012 in Chicago.
But you didn't have that at the time. It was just you and a dude, right? Like two guys with cell phones. Was that the landscape at the time?
It was dumb luck. I didn't think the call center in May, before we went to Chicago, we were at Howard's Mexican restaurant, and Howie put my phone number in the ad. And somebody called my phone. I go, what the heck is this about, right? All of a sudden, I write my first order on a napkin. The person buys some Disney on Ice tickets in Arkansas, and I go, well, I'm 1 for 1. What would happen if we bring in hundreds of phone calls a day and we got control of that retail customer? How would that call center look? And it just dumb luck, and we're the only call center left about 12 or 13 years later.
Wow. Wow, that is such a cool story, man. So, okay, I got to ask this. So, pay-per-click, it sounds like you were doing that in the early days.
Yep.
And that's obviously changed a ton over the years. Google changes their algorithm. I'm not sure what the schedule is, but it seems like fairly often. Pay-per-click means you don't owe any money until someone clicks on your ad. It does not mean they're going to buy anything from you. They could just be clicking.
That's
right.
correct.
And you're now basically directing a consumer that is on your website to another business's webpage. Is that how that worked? Or did you have your own portal and it said, here's the ticket that I'm selling, but it's not my ticket? They don't know that, obviously.
Correct. So, if you look at StubHub or Vivid Seats, none of those big competitors own their tickets. So every ticket website is a conglomerate or goes through an exchange. And there's typically 2,000 professional resellers across the country that we work with, and their tickets show up on our site. It goes into a marketplace. You compete with the other people that have tickets. And on our end, when we sell a ticket, we generate a service fee or a fee associated with doing the marketing and advertising to move that ticket.
Now, I got to ask, because I was sitting here thinking, okay, I'm a company, I'm StubHub. I am out there to basically transact as many ticket sales as I possibly can. I decide I want to white label this and start working with a company like yours to advertise the product, get more eyeballs on it, and turn things over more quickly. What's stopping me from going out and just being the pay-per-click and like putting you out of business? Is that not a risk, or am I not looking at this right?
Well, you have to look at the whole ecosystem of secondary tickets. So, last time I checked, if I could give you an estimate, there's about $100 million a month spend plus in our vertical. So one advertiser that comes in that goes, well, I'm just going to run up the score of the pay-per-click. You also got people who've been doing this for 10, 15 years that probably have a better quality score, a website with a better user experience, a brand name. So one person cannot come in there and just run up the score and just take you out of an auction.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I knew there had to be something I was missing there, but I was just like, if I'm having all these other people do the advertising for me, why don't I just do the advertising and keep more? But I guess it's not costing them anything, right? It's costing you to drive the leads, and you're making profit on your service fees and the markup, right?
Well, yeah. And so, with the secondary tickets, 99% of people get in the industry to buy and sell tickets. The last thing that a professional broker wants to do is go out there and run pay-per-click.
Yeah.
And that was myself too. I would have preferred just to have stayed and bought and sold tickets and take different positions on sporting events. But what I soon found out was I wanted more control over those customers. And so I hired my business partner. We went out and found people that certainly had a skill set that I knew nothing about.
I have another random question for you. So I'm thinking of when a football game is going to happen, say. It's scheduled. You see the schedule, like let's say Nebraska is going to play Ohio State. And let's say there's a point spread of, 10. Let's say the Huskers are getting 10. And closer to the game, it comes out that the Huskers starting quarterback and their starting star receiver and star running back are in a car accident while they're all together. And so now it comes out that it's going to be probably a pretty big loss on the Husker side. Does that adjust pricing of tickets? Because I know it does in betting. Like if you're going to bet at Vegas, your point spread is going to swing.
Absolutely, it does. And, if we talk about the DNA profile of a customer too, those customers that buy tickets early for the Nebraska-Ohio State game, we've sold tickets as early as February for a game in the fall. They're planners, and they typically come in from out of town. A last-minute buyer doesn't come into town last minute. They're usually local, and they're usually on the fence. Do I want to go to this game or don't I? So last minute, when you got people on the fence, and if you have your star quarterback out or your running back, the on-the-fence type of 50-50 buyer will make the decision not to go. Thus, we see those ticket prices plummet.
Okay, yeah, the demand will go down because the locals. Yeah, that makes sense. Huh, it's really interesting. Now, you threw out Chicago, and I thought I heard Miami in there too at some point. What happened with Chicago? Did you end up moving there, and why?
Yeah, so, at the end of 2011, just went through the longest divorce in the history of divorces. And, I just needed a change of scenery. I mean, this was kind of there wasn't anything to basically do here, right? We had the Omaha nightlife, or we'd go out and hit a few too many drinks, and I was doing that. So, I went to Chicago, and, it was a great experience. Lived right downtown, had the smallest place at the Trump Tower. That's about all I could afford at the time.
That's pretty cool to be able to say that, though.
Yeah,
And it probably is still pricey as hell, right?
No. It's
Really?
Actually, I moved there in 2012. Chicago prices have come way down. I think it's back to 2012 pricing, honestly.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
How much was your place at the Trump Tower back in 2012? Do you remember?
I think my one bedroom was about $3,600 a month. Yeah.
A little more pricey than here.
My neighbor was the CEO of United Airlines. I think he lived in a $12 million place at the time.
I bet you made some great connections in that building, though.
There was some great late nights at the Rebar. You'd meet some very eclectic people in there.
Rebar was at a local nightclub that was right real close.
I've actually been to the Rebar.
Yeah.
They used to have a band from Omaha that used to go there, the Aphrodisiacs.
Oh, I remember them.
Yeah. They used to play there, and I actually caught them when they were in Chicago. Yeah.
Nice.
That's my claim to fame. Okay, so Chicago was fun. And how long were you there?
So I was in Chicago for a couple years.
Yep.
And then the winter of 14 hit, and he went to Miami Beach and says, gosh, I love this way too much. So made the move to Miami Beach in March of 14.
Was that cheaper or more expensive than the Trump Tower?
That was more expensive.
Is it really?
Well, do you want to hear the story about the condo?
Please.
I had down there. So I lived at the 1500 building. It was 1500 Ocean, right?
Okay.
So it was in the middle of everything. So my next door neighbor was Alan Dershowitz, and Mark Cuban had a place in the building.
Good
and
Lord.
So I bought it or rented an original place. Well, my second one, it was a penthouse that was in 1500 Ocean. And it should have been renting for $15,000 a month, but it was filthy dirty. I got half price off that. Well, what's a really crazy story is that building went up in '98 towards the end of Bill Clinton's presidency, and Clinton had a friend, quote unquote, that lived in that building that he would chum around Miami Beach with, and lived in my penthouse. So the Secret Service had been through there, and Clinton had spent the night at the place I rented. It was a really interesting story. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, her parents were huge donors to the DNC. So Bill would, he'd frequent places, Prime 112, and then they had a spot called the Forge, which was outstanding. It's now closed, but those were Clinton's favorite places down there.
So that place was definitely not bugged.
Yeah. Man, so you and Slick Willie were sharing a roof at one time.
Yeah, I think that happened. So.
Did the bed come with the place, or did you bring your own?
It came with it. But
wow.
It was a little bit fishy, so we did something else later.
I was going to say, was it a blue bedspread? Sorry, that was a bad joke. Okay, so Miami Beach, and why'd you come back to Omaha, of all places?
So I was in Miami Beach for about 3 years. I was in the younger party scene at the time, and eventually it just drains you. There was some drama down there. I had some really good employees, but I knew enough people back here, and I thought the workforce in Omaha was a lot more solid. So I made the decision to build up my salespeople in Omaha, and it seemed to work a lot better. So I met my top one at the cigar bar. I actually met about 2 or 3 people, and then the 2 or 3 key people I met, they referred others in, and it just grew like a spider web. So it's really worked that we're back here, and just like the workforce a lot better.
Did you ever try to recruit Ted?
No, but I probably would have taken it at
You
that time.
probably would have. You would have been my homie hookup for the Super Bowl, buddy.
I think we did, but the salary requirements were just a lot more than I could pay there.
I don't know. I was doing Omaha nightlife. I was making no money.
You should see all the budget dollars that get allocated towards Ted's appearances here at the studio. Pretty high. Okay.
And I just sit in the background and just absorb it all in.
Now, I do want to, ask you something, because I was thinking back to COVID days of yesteryear, 2020. That had to do something bad for the ticket business, I would assume. What happened during that time frame?
So it wasn't just bad. It was the atomic bomb. I mean, it was shut down and zero. So I remember I was watching the Creighton Big East game on a Friday, and we were humming along. We were having a record Friday. There was on sales. All of a sudden, boom, about noon that day, they threw the basketball teams off the court, canceled the tournament. And
In the middle of the game?
In the middle of the game.
I was so vivid. I remember, like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yes.
they're already playing. Just let them finish.
Yeah, it was really nuts. And so from there, 1 week later, I had to let my entire staff go. I mean, there just wasn't money to pay the staff. And
How many employees did you have at the time?
I think we had about 40.
40.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a bad day. Yeah. Yeah, the business went to zero. And it took us a year before we had any resemblance of a business again. And then by May of 21, we started to really see events go back. We had a good 21, and then 22 and 23 were full throttle. But yeah, those were really dark days in COVID.
I specifically remember, though, like, I'm a big concert goer, and I just remember, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever go see a concert again. Like, will there ever... I'm just started reminiscing about all the people, and I know sporting events too. I go a lot of football games, but like concerts was the thing. I was like, this will never happen again.
I think the weirdest thing about all the weird things that happened during COVID was when they started putting cardboard silhouettes of people or likenesses in the stands. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And they would start playing like crowd cheering and stuff. They were just piping in music. It was such a bizarre state of affairs at the time. And I just remember, like, what is going on?
in this
world?
I remember starting to look for my fake ID that I got my shots, so I could go to events. I was like, how do I get one of these fake ones? And then people were getting busted left and right doing that.
You could have just gotten the shot.
It wasn't anti-shot. It was the fact that I didn't think it was tested. So,
aren't you the guy that almost died from West Nile virus?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's no remedy for that.
We are obviously not scientists and don't follow Ted for immunology suggestions.
Hey, you know what? I get my flu shot, so I mean, I'm not anti-shot. I just didn't believe in it, and it's scary though. I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to attend anything ever again without this damn card.
Okay, John, you're talking about a pretty dark time, laying off 40 people. I can't imagine what that would be like. Did you have to individually meet with all of them, or were you just kind of like, all right, everybody gather around? Times are tough.
I met with my key people one-on-one and, called the sales and customer service team in, and
they had to know, right? I mean, they had to have an idea that.
Well, there was some people that didn't have a clue, right? So, and I remember I bought a new car outside and it got keyed that same day.
Oh, yeah.
What these employees do not understand, it was the worst day of my life. As an employer, when you build a culture, when you provide gainful employment, and then you take away somebody's life just like that, it was absolutely terrible. So, I just tried to stay in contact. We had reps that were optimistic, thinking, well, can I come back in 2 or 3 weeks? Well, heck yes. And we had Trump at the time telling us we'd be reopened by Easter. And so, this thing certainly went into the summer. It went into the fall, and did everything I could with, the unemployment. I think everybody got $1,000 a week. Well, most jobs I had paid well over that, double if not triple that. So how are you supposed to live on $1,000 a week when you have $150,000 a year lifestyle?
Especially when you're living in Trump Tower.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned a year passed before you had the ability to put some semblance of the same business back together. Did you get the band back together? Did a lot of employees come back and you were able to rehire them, or did they need to move on and just didn't work out?
There was only 2 or 3 employees that I really wanted back that had other opportunities. So, but as a whole, I think I had 80% of my workforce returned to us.
After a
That's
year.
amazing.
After an entire year, right? And so, I just think it's a testament to our culture. I actually went through, and we have about 240 years of combined ticket experience on our team.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I have my business partner, Howie's been doing this 15 years, 21 for me, a sales rep at 17, my, VP of operations, 17 years. So I just think it's a business that's very addicting. And once people really love that, the thrill of buying and selling tickets and passionately putting people in really great seats, they're addicted to that job opportunity. And I've been very fortunate to have the staff I do.
How many of those staff members from COVID that you got back are still with you today? if you had to guess?
95%.
That's just unbelievable.
Well, it's a big hat tip to your culture building that you obviously focused on over
It's
the
also
years.
a niche, though. I mean, what you do, not everybody does.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
Yeah, you go to a high school dance recital and you see one of your ex-employees out there scalping tickets. Like, call me next
It's not
week.
like that now, buddy.
Yeah. No, speaking of not like that now, you mentioned before we started recording that there's been some industry-wide changes in the realm of ticket sales that have been a little bit jarring. Do you want to maybe talk about that? What's some recent stuff that's happened that has affected your business?
Sure. Well, and so far this hasn't, but one of the concerning things that just passed was the state of Maine passed price caps on tickets. So that means if you buy a ticket with a face value of about $100, the most you could resell that ticket for is $110.
It's like the rental market, where they were saying that you can't charge above a certain amount for rent
control. Yep.
Yeah, so if I think that this is taken to court, which it will be, it's unconstitutional. It just doesn't hold any water. But the other thing is this is absolutely terrible for the consumer.
It's going to create a black market, right?
It's a black market. And so the one big venue, I think it's the Cumberland Center in Portland, Maine, they get huge acts that basically go. So if you're not on that on sale and, you can't hit the box office immediately or Ticketmaster, then no professional resellers are going to buy tickets because a 10% margin does not keep us in this business.
Yeah, you have staff and salaries and all those operating expenses to pay for. 10% is pretty thin margins to run on, right?
Absolutely. And so if it's a big act, whether that be a Taylor Swift or an Elton John, then anybody that's going to sell you a ticket is going to be on the black market, right?
Yep.
So you're going to have to take your cash. You're going to have to meet in a back alleyway. You will not be dealing with a business like Box Office Ticket Sales, StubHub, or Vivid Seats that has merchant accounts, a customer service team, operations, ways to deliver tickets that have proven to work over and over again. So this is a terrible deal for a consumer. And I just think that the governor and, the politics are obviously what they are in Maine. We don't need to say which side of the aisle. I think we all know that. But, just a really badly passed bill.
So pretty much going to be buying tickets from the cartel. Yeah, but would you like your cocaine, or would you like your tickets to the show?
The Silk Road of ticket sales. Yeah. Okay. At what point and why did real estate enter the picture for you after having such a business you've slugged it out over the years and went through multiple market adaptations and all that? Like, why divert the attention from that and look at real estate?
So coming off of COVID, secondary tickets was the hottest industry else that happened, right? So we had the Taylor Swift, we had a bunch of artists, we had incredible pent up demand for live events. So with that demand, we had record profits, right? So the first thing is, hey, what vehicle could I use to depreciate and look at the tax advantages of buying real estate? So
yeah, because you were making basically all active income out of that business, right? As the owner of it. So yeah, you're paying probably 35% gross taxes on everything.
Absolutely.
More or less. Yeah.
The highest tax bracket. So yeah, the first thing that got me interested was the taxes, right? And then I started to look at real estate, say, well, I need 25% money down. So if I buy $1 million of property, what's my return on that $250,000? So I factored in the taxes, I figured in the equity payments, and I factored in the appreciation, and I found the returns on that cash on cash investment were 18-22% a year that just get better as your amortization schedule reaches more principal than equity. And I said, boy, that would take a hell of a year in the stock market to beat that return I'm finding in real estate.
Now, I noticed you didn't mention cash flow in there. Was that on purpose, or was that not even part of what you were considering in this?
It was not, and I haven't cash flowed. So would I love to find properties that do cash flow? Absolutely. But the cash flow was not a need because I had another business that was cash flowing.
Yeah.
Right?
So you were purely interested in the equity and tax advantages of investing in real estate.
Appreciation, equity, taxes.
Yep.
You got it.
No, that's so interesting. It's usually this is a little bit different than a normal, guest we would have on here who's typically an owner operator, people that flip houses, own rentals for cash flow and appreciation and all that stuff. But I really like this conversation because You're essentially a small business owner that has grown into a niche market as basically one of the top of the second tier. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you accumulated, like, how many rentals did you buy when you decided to do this?
So, yeah, over the course of a year, I think we have about 35 individual properties, and we're sitting at about 60 to 65 doors.
Wait, over a year? You did this in 1 year?
Yes.
You bought 35 properties, 60 doors in 1 year?
Yes.
As an afterthought, more or less.
That's correct.
Using your Google keywords that you've developed?
I wish I would have, because I would have found better deals.
Yeah. No, okay. You mentioned you're not really in it for cash flow. Were you focusing on better located parts of town and you weren't as concerned about your rent to price ratio? Was that the idea? Just something that's going to hold its value better and maybe appreciate?
Yeah. So, we really focused on Gretna, Elkhorn, and Bellevue. I really liked that Bellevue area. We got some properties close to the base, got officers in the Air Force that rent, and they're great tenants. So, yeah, it was basically those three areas that we focused on.
Okay. So for those of you listeners out there that aren't from the Omaha area, Bellevue is kind of a sister city. It's about 20 minutes south of Omaha. There's an Air Force base there, Strategic Air Command, so high demand for rental housing in the area. And then Elkhorn and Gretna are more suburbia, but they are very, very hot areas right now, like appreciating like crazy, tons of new development, a lot of stuff happening in the, the downtown parts of town with redevelopment and whatnot. So yeah, I can't poke holes in that strategy.
One nice thing about when you get the military in there, if they do trash the place or causing issues, you can call their officer and they get...
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a certain standard that they have to keep. Now, you have to let them out of the lease at any point if they get deployed.
Yeah,
sure.
But if they trash your place, you can call into the base, talk to their commanding officer, and their pay will get docked. They will take care of it, and I believe that they can't level up that year.
Okay.
Ranking-wise.
That makes sense.
That might be annoying that I'm stuck on this, but I just can't get over the fact that you bought 35 properties in 1 year. And you had no intention of being an active real estate investor. But that's bananas. Like, I don't know if you know that.
Were you buying these off the MLS? Or?
Yeah, how are you even getting enough leads to look at enough properties to make enough offers to end up with 35 deals? I mean, you had to go out and do like...
Or package deals?
There was probably three or four realtors I basically used.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you going through any of these, or were you like, hey, tell me when you got a good one?
It was basically tell me when you got a good one, right? So it was a tax play, and it was something that we did. Now, if I had to go back, would I be more strategic? Yes. And, we can talk about this later, but a lot of the single families were doing 1031 exchanges, and I'm moving into quadplexes and apartment complexes. So I learned the single family homes are really difficult, and it wasn't even a positive cash flow. There was some that we were way underwater on that had to get exchanged. So,
yeah.
I wouldn't recommend what I did. My head was kind of in the wrong place. But at the same time, I've still won on the whole thing because you look at some of the accelerated depreciation that's out there, the tax advantages. And yeah, this was a tax play first for me.
I always get a little bit irritated and try to hold myself back from even entering the conversation, but I'll be on like Reddit or LinkedIn or, well, usually it's Reddit, or there will be some Instagram, chat that's blowing up where people are talking about how terrible real estate is compared to the overall stock market. And like, yeah, if you want to deal with that, blah, 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 but your cash on cash returns only going to be 6%, where I can get, 12 or 13 in the stock market in any given year. And they overlook the fact that there's a total return in your portfolio, not just the cash flow. That's the metric that most people zero in on, is just what's my cash on cash return? Am I going to get a 6 or 7% return? Most people leave it at that. But when you factor in depreciation and other tax benefits, you factor in market appreciation and all the components that make up what a real estate holding actually is, it blows away anything else out there. I have yet to find it. And if I did, you bet your ass I'd be dumping all my real estate and put my money into it, because it's not even close when you look at all of it.
No.
With the tax advantages, especially over time. But I'll get off my high horse there, but I just had to throw it out because I'm scared of my Reddit threads. So
One thing that is nice, though, is when you have those single families, love them or hate them, they are a lot easier to sell versus the
That's
multifamilies. Yeah. So if you do need some quick cash, or if you got an investment that works really well, those single families, you can get rid of those in 30 days.
Yes.
You'll find that anything else is 90 days or longer.
That's exactly why I will always own some single families,
Quick
is
cash.
because, and if you bought, say, just a couple a year, after 10 years, you got 20 of those things. You could sell one off per year and probably have enough equity to replace your income of a 6-figure job, right? And you have even more than that. You can make more moves. You can borrow against it tax-free. You can do all different kinds of things. So it just gives you,
there's a house I bought in 2022 that I have under contract right now. I think I bought it for $40,000 condemned with big hole in it. 26 Pacific. Put 40 to 60 grand in it. I don't remember where I was at on it. Praised for like 125. Did a cash out refi.
Yeah.
And then at one point it praised, well, let's just say the last time it praised for 170 now. Have that under contract to sell. So, I took my initial cash out. I made $500 cash flow. It was a nice tax write-off for a while. And that particular property, I'm now going to walk away with another $50,000 in cash.
Yeah. Right.
And and that's in 3.5 years.
Yeah. Amazing. You'd probably take, I know it's a pain in the ass like this business is, but you'd probably take 10 more of those, wouldn't you? If you knew you knew what the outcome was going to be
all day long.
Yeah. So no, that's really cool. Now, in your portfolio, do you just basically have somebody manage it, and you're more or less kind of just overseeing the overseer?
Yeah. So we've condensed it to one property manager now, and then I have a realtor that's helping me through consulting, and we're moving a lot of these single families that were at a significant cash flow loss, and we're moving into apartments and quadplexes.
Yeah. Are you finding that hard to find inventory that's suitable for what you're looking to do?
I'm really not. A lot of the apartments, if you run the math on them, they're cash flowing immediately. I think the thing is, a lot of the investors want a greater cash flow.
Yeah.
And those are a little bit more difficult to get.
Owen's got a great 5-story he's selling right now.
It's four story.
4-story.
But I do want to ask you something. So on the pay-per-click thing, I'm just bouncing back to the ticket business here like I do. I have run pay-per-click at a much, much smaller scale that's specifically targeted for Omaha and specifically for motivated sellers. So we buy houses in Omaha, sell my house fast, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And I've had, $5 or $6 grand a month as a spend for, a few years. And that can add up, but you get, 1 or 2 deals and it pays for itself. That's the way I've always looked at it.
Sure.
What does a normal pay-per-click spend look like? And what is the most you think you've ever paid in 1 month?
For the ticket company.
Yeah.
Well, the ticket company, when I first started, our average cost per click was 25 cents. Right?
Okay. Yep.
And so now we've seen that cost per click raise. We're looking at about $1 or $1.25.
Okay.
I can tell you that in the secondary ticket business that, if you're a real heavy hitter, a real marketer, the low end of that spectrum is $700,000 a month to spend. And I probably think that the big players are probably north of $5 million a month of spend. So it's a real transactional business. A lot of people use those search engines. There's tickets that go on sale. The tickets become scarce. And then, they're desperate. They're looking for those Taylor Swift tickets. And so that's where that Google search comes in.
Okay.
Wow. So where do you line up in there? You said between
we're on the lower end.
Yeah.
If I was on the higher end, I'd have the company sold like the StubHub guys or the Vivid guys, and be on my yacht at the French Riviera. So,
do you run that all through your points on your credit card so that way you can get it?
Well, that's a great thought. I used to, but Google's now changed the rules. You can't put it on a credit card.
What?
It's an
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I ran all my pay-per-click through my credit card. I would get points like crazy on that. That sucks.
The points were great till one day the points stopped. So
that does suck.
Yeah.
What? Man.
Now, is there any...
Why do they got to kill all the fun?
Yeah, I know.
What about these other search engines besides Google? Like,
Bing?
there's DuckDuckGo, Bing.
Sure.
Are those having value, and are they a lot cheaper?
Yeah, so Bing, I have found, is cheaper. Bing has reinvented themselves. And so in our ticket business with our call center, we have a client base that we service that's one of the oldest client bases. There's the greatest percentage that I've seen of customers over 65. And so we've seen
AOL and Prodigy are their search engines still.
Netscape. Right. No, but they're still using Yahoo and they're still using Bing. So yeah, that's certainly a great search engine, that seems to be effective.
Are you still investing pretty significantly in those also on your pay-per-click?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, is it a lot cheaper?
Yeah, so I've typically seen the cost per click on Bing cheaper than Google. I don't know if it's the competitive forces. I don't know if the search engine converts as well. There's probably a lot of factors. The truth is the people that hold the keys to how pay-per-click works are probably locked away in some bunker, and I don't have a clue.
I ask because, I hear everybody talking about Google AdWords, but nobody talks. I've never had a discussion once about anything other than Google.
I have my business on Bing, my house flipping business. I don't do anything with it anymore, but I would get notifications like, oh, your business is getting noticed or whatever. And I've never advertised on it. I did look, I considered it because I was like, is this kind of a Coke and Pepsi thing? Like, could I try this and like kill it? And because everybody just thinks it doesn't work. And then I just never did. So I'd be curious to know, anybody catching this episode, if you've ever advertised on Bing and had some success with it, hit us up in our Instagram channel.
All my tracker or all my search engines are DuckDuckGo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the nobody can tell what you're doing.
Nobody can tell what you're doing. No, there's no tracking of any source. Yeah. So I do everything on there.
That's great.
Little do you know, there's servers in China, but
I'm sure it is. It makes me feel better.
Yeah. Well, John, we've got a section in our podcast where we talk about something that maybe didn't go all that great in usually your business or your life, in a section that we call
Failing Forward.
Oh, that's pretty good. You have anything like that? Or is it, sounds like you had some bumpy roads here. Anything you look back on and say, man, that was a mistake, but we're better for it now?
Yeah. So if I look back on the mistakes, it was when we moved to Chicago, and boy, I used to have an open bar at the office and used to party with the employees and take them out to happy hour, and we'd all be best friends. And so I would say that the biggest mistake is introducing alcohol to the workplace.
I concur.
Ted. Not having that separation between boss and, it kind of just hurt the culture too. You think that partying with people and, when it's every single night, you're throwing your car down, the employees become entitled. They think that you're their friends. And, since we changed a lot of the things, I think our culture of the company's a lot better.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But how old were you? You were in your 20s about that time, weren't you?
I was like 31, 32.
Yeah. So,
that
you were on the tail end of when it was still cool to be able to do that.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah. And, I think everybody in those ages, when we were in the nightlife industry, it was the same thing. We're drinking consistently. We do the podcast. The rule is now we just don't get the producer drunk. Yeah.
Makes sense.
The rule should be don't get your Owen drunk, I think, because my podcast performance tails off significantly after sipping on bourbon number 2.
We just got to say stop at 2, Owen.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. That's right. Well, John, I've been hearing your name from Ted for a while now, and he always, or at least in my mind, you are always associated as the guy that owns the badass car. And has some really expensive shoes.
That's his reputation. That's his reputation at the cigar bar. He's always got the nicest rides that pull up.
Will you tell us? I know you did not want to talk about this. I know. So this is not a brag on, but I'm bragging on your behalf here. So you have
that's the best type of brag.
You have a pretty significant vehicle. What is it? And will you tell us kind of like what that epitomizes for you?
Yeah. So this is the Rolls-Royce Colian, the SUV model. And, I've loved these really high-end SUVs. So I had a Porsche Cayenne that was back in the day. And so for the first time, I think Rolls-Royce came out with theirs in 2017, 2018. I was living in South Beach, and I saw a couple of those cars down there. Instantly fell in love with the vehicle. So a couple Novembers ago, I got a hold of a Charlotte, North Carolina dealer. They had one on the lot. It was custom. Really liked the interior, so I pulled the trigger on that Rolls Royce, and it's just a great vehicle. What does that epitomize? It's a great conversation starter. but most people, they want the lottery tickets. That Rolls Royce really symbolizes just 20 years of just discipline, consistency, making your ways through the peaks and valleys, and just kind of the struggle along the way and then the excellence that we come out on the other side really represents that Rolls Royce.
I feel like every YouTuber, and everybody that is anybody trying to make it big needs to have the Lambo, have the Ferrari,
or just rent them for an hour,
or rent them and take their pictures in it. But they're going for it and they're doing whatever they can to get it. But they don't see what it resembles. Like they see you drive, like, oh, I need to get one of those, or I can't. It's not fair that he's got it. But no, you work your ass off, you work years for it, and like you said, that's showcasing your lifelong, hard work and putting everything into it. You earned that vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah,
no, that's true.
So, I mean, much respect. I love that.
Well, John, this is going to be the cherry on top to an awesome episode here. We've got one last section that we call the OT with Owen and Ted, where we've got some questions we're going to fire at you that we ask most of our guests. The first one
most.
Yeah. If you were going to write a book, what would it be about or title?
Yeah, so the book that I would write, it would be about leaving the matrix. And, the story, when I went to high school, I never really fit in socially. I thought that high school was about trying to put us in a box to go work for somebody else or some external entity. And, at the time I was very religious. I felt in a box with some religious systems. So over the last 20 years, I've really become about finding the power of God internally, finding your own vision and going for it, right? So I've talked to some coaches that were very successful, and our conversation is about, hey, if you're going to be a college football coach, college basketball coach, you got to run your own program. You can't follow another guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great lesson. You look at here locally, right? We had Bob Devaney and Tom Osborne, two great coaches, but different guys, different programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be about, at one point as a young kid, I was a follower. I wanted to be liked and accepted, and I wanted to go through the social norms. And I soon found out that what everybody was chasing inside this box was not for me. And then so throughout the years, I learned to really believe in my own vision, my own path, and situating myself in a business that really complements my strengths and something that's a fit for me.
I love that. Do you think that the school systems have gotten any better with trying to get people outside of that traditional box, like getting them into different trades, or do you think it's the same thing as it was back then?
I think it's a little bit better. I heard that, like in the high school mode, when we were in high school, it was, if you don't go to college, you're a loser, right? Or if you're a plumber, there's something wrong with it. So I do hear that they're putting kids in the trades more. But I still think the pressure of having straight A's is just the most ridiculous asinine concept I've ever heard, right? So you're playing in a education system that the Rockefellers invented in 1913 to produce a worker. And you got parents.
He just had this long discussion with me.
I'm reading the book right now called Titan about John Rockefeller.
Okay,
yeah, and it talks a ton about his school, his funding and involvement in the education system.
Well, and then you have these ignorant teachers and parents that thinks that there's something great about a straight A, that you just mastered the Rockefeller system.
Mm-hmm.
Great. You're John Rockefeller's little, whatever, right? Well, guess what? You got to be your own person. And this education system does nothing to basically foster individuality, entrepreneurship, and celebrating one's own vision. And if that vision is different than the school system, I mean, you don't have a social credit score. The teachers don't like you. So I still think it's a very dangerous and toxic place.
Social credit score. I like that. Never heard anybody put it that way.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody get so deep into it, but I mean, a lot of it makes sense. It's your podcast. You can interview anyone in the world today. It doesn't need to be real estate related. Who's the one person you'd love to interview? And if you could ask one question, what is it? And we just ask it somebody alive today so people can relate.
Probably the most famous person that had a huge influence on me was Coach Tom Osborne. And so, we talked earlier in the podcast about my love of Nebraska football. And, as a young kid, I loved his rosters, but I think he taught Nebraska a lot of great life lessons. The lesson of being humble, the lesson of being consistency. And certainly in the 90s, what he built in Nebraska football, that culture was something that I've never seen. And also during that time, we had great journalism from Tom Chattel, Lee Barfnick's articles that really took a deep dive. So I studied Tom Osborne, right? If I were to ask him one question, I think I probably would have taken a deep dive into the Lawrence Phillips situation from 95. What went into his decision as to how he handled it. I'd even heard that.
For people who don't know what the situation is, can you restate that?
Yeah, so Lawrence Phillips was a Nebraska running back. Matter of fact, his third game of the year, he goes to Michigan State, runs for 238 yards, and he had the Heisman locked up. He comes home and goes to a house of a former Nebraska football coach and finds his girlfriend there and drags her down the flight of three flights of stairs. It was a terrible incident. And so the incident hit Coach Osborne's desk. Instead of kicking him off the football team, he suspended him for 6 games, brought Lawrence Phillips back. And that decision, Tom was criticized for it. It was a very tough call. Tragically, years later, Lawrence Phillips couldn't stay clean, ended up in California prison, and supposedly murdered himself 8 or 9 years ago under suspicious circumstances. So really a tragic story. A guy who was found on a park bench in Compton, California, that comes to Lincoln and just rips it up and has everything in front of him and just throws it away.
Tragedy. Yeah. That was such a polarizing moment in not just obviously their lives, but everybody that is a fan or a believer in, Husker football and all that. That was really, really terrible time. Yes. When that happened, man, there always seems to be a little bit of drama in Nebraska football every year off the field.
Wasn't there a same situation just like a couple years ago where one of the coaches, he was the temporary coach?
Yeah, it was Scott Frost.
No, Mickey Joseph.
Sorry.
That whole thing got dropped.
It wasn't his wife sleeping with another coach's, or they're having a little like 3-way system going on there.
A 3-way system.
Well, it would have been a Nebraska quarterback before Mickey. We've heard Frank Solich stories. We don't know what's true or what's not, or we hear stories of Frost being drunk, but yet I talked to people that hung around Frost, and no one has ever said that he saw Frost drunk firsthand. So I don't know.
He got another job.
Yeah.
So it must have not have been that bad.
Interesting.
All right. You seem to be a deep thinker, John. So if you don't want to think deeply on this and you want to go lighthearted, that's fine. But we've got a kind of a hard-hitting question here in that at the end of the line for you, when somebody's walking down the church aisle to give your eulogy, who do you think that'll be, and what kind of a legacy do you hope to leave behind?
I'm sure, it would be one of my friends, right? If it happened now, it would probably be my father. But, the legacy that I'm most proud of, I've really enjoyed employing people, offering them better opportunities than what they would earn other places. Really love learning and coaching. And, I also like to talk to people about their finances and financial planning because most people make a lot of mistakes. So, I just hope that people would say that, John enjoyed entrepreneurship. John looked out for others and always tried to use his talents and abilities to maximize others and put them in the best possible positions for success. That would be what I would want people to say about me.
Perfect.
John, you're not the everyday CEO. I'm going to tell you that, man. You're very open and you're very candid, and I really do appreciate that. But the next one is, if you were to talk specifically to a mentor in a life, dead or alive, who is it, and what would you say to him right now?
I would probably tell you that my biggest mentor was my father. He's still living, but and I've told him this several times prior. So he came from humble beginnings, really struggled in Holdridge, Nebraska as a kid, became a tax partner at a Big Six firm, ran the tax office at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And, the thing I learned about him, he wasn't probably the brightest or the sharpest guy in the room, but it was just really consistent. Beat out other guys that probably had a lot more talent, had a mentality that was second to to none and showed me as a kid how to have a better attitude than somebody across the street. I learned as a kid why some people were broke and why others prospered, right? And it was my dad's attitude and his work ethic that we always had more than what we wanted. I saw other people complain all the time and really have shit attitudes for what they wanted to do, and they weren't all that successful. So I've learned as a young kid, and I've told my dad this, I go, you really taught me the difference between mediocrity and success. And it was really those lessons that I think took my business at a very young age and got this thing over the top.
That's great soundbite.
Can I ask a question?
I mean, you are here, so I mean,
John, I've heard a lot about your business and the growth and stuff. But I think one of the questions, I don't know if it was answered. I probably missed it. What was your why when it is you got into the whole ticket industry? And how has that changed from when you started to where it is right now?
Well, I think I got in for two reasons then, and it's still the same now. It was number one, money, and number two, to have a system to make time, right? That's still the same, but, I didn't realize along the way, all the friends, all the people I've mentored, all the opportunities that came along with this. So, the why has changed, in that I think it's really the business has helped me to develop as a person, made my leadership skills better, made me focus on my own spirituality, focus on health and all those other areas. So it started as time and money, and then all of a sudden I think that the pie chart became diluted with other important things and other opportunities that entrepreneurship has afforded me.
Man, I really love the way you assemble your word salad there. That was some good stuff. All right, last question for you, John. What are you looking for in business or life right now? Everybody's typically looking for something. Do you have any missing spots on your depth chart in the business? Are you looking to buy another Bentley? What's next for you?
I think what's next for us is, we certainly want to enter that next tier of a marketer. So, we're always looking to add very competent digital marketers on our team that are definitely a fit. Gals that are very strategic, that have visions that we don't. So, my mentality in business is at all times, when I don't have a skill set or somebody else does, we need to go find the very best person, sell them on the company with our attitude, mentalities, and thought processes, and recruit that in. So that's probably the biggest need, is just continuously great marketers to expand the company.
if there's somebody that's listening that maybe has something they're trying to sell real estate wise, what's your buy box look like today?
I'm very open. Really, I got in a little bit of trouble for not focusing on cash flow as much as I should. It still worked out because the taxes. But yeah, if somebody has something that has great cash flow, preferably a multifamily unit, I think that would check the buy box.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming out. We've talked so many times over a cigar, so some of these stories, it's like hearing it twice. And but it's cool to hear the timeline and how it happened and how it's changed your life and the ups and downs of your life. It's just been amazing. And again, I mentioned it already once, but being in your position, doing what you're doing, it's really cool to get somebody to come in here like yourself and really just kind of be so open and candid. So thank you so much for that, and look forward to having a smoke with you here soon. And with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of REIA Radio, Dennis Bertrand and Ted Kaasch.
Dennis is in the room.
I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to John, from dumpster diving and working the corner to driving a Bentley to the Trump Tower. Uhrich, signing off. One last section in our podcast that we call the
I was going to say failing forward.
Take two.
Sorry.